Welcome to Adam Chang's Pandas and Treasures exhibition opening. I'd like to begin by indicating that this evening we are on the country of the Darug people, of the Darug nation, and I'd like to acknowledge Darug people whose ancestors had been the traditional owners of the land for thousands of years. I pay my respect to the elders, past and present. We're extremely pleased to see on this occasion a wonderful, supportive crowd and some really important guests in and outside the university. We have here our Senior Deputy Vice Chancellor of Western University, Professor Scott Holmes, who will welcome you in a minute. From the government, we have Ms. Tracy Liu, Assistant Advisor from the Department of New South Wales Premier and Cabinet. And we have, of course, the exhibition artist, Mr. Adam Chang, with us today, and with him, his longtime friend, Sydney's celebrated gallerist, Dr. Jean Sherman, and eminent art historian and art connoisseur, Dr. Igor Zhang. Thank you very much for coming. It gives us special pleasure to see many of the Institute's longtime friends here this evening with us, among whom are Louis Guest from White Rabbit, Manager of Research from the White Rabbit Collection in Sydney, and a launch speaker for Mr. Sanjawe's exhibition last year, if you remember. And award-winning poet, Mark Tredinek, and Chinese-Australian poet, Ms. Tang Yingxia. Welcome you to the Institute. And we have Rosita Ann and Ms. Tao Shelan from ChinaNews.com. Thank you very much for coming to the Institute. Thank you very much for coming to Adam Chang's Pandas and Treasures exhibition. We have been planning for this exhibition for a long time, and it's great to have the artist here today with us, and it's great to have people, fans, curators, gallerists to be here with us for a short period of time to enjoy the exhibition. Tonight we have invited two musicians to help kick off our opening. They are Ms. Liu Ying, the erhu player, and Mr. Andrew Wilson, the cellist. Liu Ying is, of course, a Sydney-based musician and researcher, and she's a good friend to the Institute. And every time when I have a request, she is there for us. Andrew Wilson is a cellist who has played with the symphony orchestras of Australia, USA, and UK. The two of them have been collaborating with two very different string instruments since 2004. And the first piece that they're going to play for us is the theme music of the Oscar-winning film called Crouching Tiger and Hidden Dragon. And the second piece that they're going to do is a combination of two Australian melodies, Love Me Sweet and Left Bank Waltz by Australian composers Carl Vine and Peter Sculthorpe. Please enjoy. Tonight we've got three speakers before Adam, the artist, takes over eventually. Our first speaker is of course, Professor Scott Holmes, Senior Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Western Sydney University. The second speaker is Dr. Jean Sherman, and our third speaker is Dr. Igor Zhang. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Professor Scott Holmes, Senior Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Western Sydney University, with his welcome message. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Darug people, and pay my respects to elders past and present. This is Darug land. Wow. They told me I was going to come and hear some music and see some paintings, and I thought, oh, okay, it's another day in the life of the Senior Deputy Vice-Chancellor, but this is amazing. Music was amazing. I can't believe this artwork. Just stunning and just blows you away, doesn't it? And so I really want to thank everyone who's been involved in making that happen. This is one of our campuses. We have 11 campuses. All of them are beautiful, but this one is exceptional. And I encourage you, if you get a chance, to come and see it in the daytime maybe as well. You can see how beautiful it really is. Welcome to our Parramatta South Campus. I'd like to acknowledge... sound crew. I'd like to acknowledge the artist Adam Chang and our many distinguished guests here this evening. I'd also like to congratulate Professor Wong, and I've got to get this right because I always call it ACIAC, and he tells us no, it's ACIAC. And the organisers of this exhibition, because this is a great space, and we can't do it without our supporters, and allow us to have that conversation around the translation of culture between our two nations. This is in some ways, and I hope will continue to be, a touch point for the relationship between our countries. There's no agenda other than to share our cultures and to understand the identity and the importance of culture in our countries. So I'm not going to hold you up because I don't know that much about art, and so I'm not going to pretend to give you an interpretation. But what I can tell you is that I know a lot about Australian art history, and in the context of that, these works are brilliant. And I'd love to see them around the university. Professor Wong, if you could swing that for us, that'd be good. But the reality is that we come here to translate our cultures and to communicate. And that's so important to me and so important to our university. So without saying anything more, because I know you don't need to hear from me too much, I'd like to invite Dr. Jean Sherman, AM, to address us.
I've been honoured to have been invited to this University of Western Sydney. I've been here before, and it's wonderful to be here again. And thank you, Professor Scott Holmes, for introducing me and handing the baton to me. And Adam, thank you for your long-standing friendship and for the many opportunities I've had to visit your studio and to experience your work, both in the studio, which is always a different experience, and in various gallery settings, exhibitions. Most importantly, of course, thank you, Adam, and where's David, for inviting me to open this exhibition. We gather on the land of the Gadigal people. We all say the same thing, but I try and say it differently. They've settled here for tens of thousands of years, the first peoples of our nation, and we pay tribute to their long-standing culture as we celebrate tonight Adam's contribution to the culture of Australia. Now, China, as we know, has had a turbulent history during the last half of the 20th century. When I emigrated, together with my husband, and at that time 2 little children, to Australia in 1964-65, work that out, we didn't last long. We stayed a year and went back to South Africa, on to London, where we lived for a number of years, and then on to Sydney again in 1976, 11 years between our first migration, which was to Melbourne, and the second one to Sydney. And when we arrived in 1976, China had just come to the end, as we all know, of a very corrosive period, the Cultural Revolution, which ran from 66 to 76, as an audience like this would know well. However, what you perhaps don't know about me was that I was a student in Paris in 1965, 1 year before the Cultural Revolution started. And as a student at that time at the Sorbonne, students, the French students, and they were international students, were running around with this Livre Rouge, the little red book of Mao Zedong. And there was a kind of feverish enthusiasm in the air about these sayings, thoughts, and so on of Mao Zedong. And frankly, I was a bit less enthusiastic than my fellow students at the time. I was a little perplexed as to how the small book of sayings and thoughts had had such an impact on the young people around me, and I didn't feel the impact of it at all. Don't worry, I'm not giving a political speech here, but I needed to. I can feel the tension in the air. But I did want to put this into some kind of context for me. So when I arrived in '76, the Cultural Revolution had come to an end. I'd had some glimmering of what that meant, and I started my professional life in Australia as an academic, teaching at Sydney University in the French department. And that didn't last terribly long, 5 years, because Australia pivoted as a country, as a culture, as an economy towards Asia. And teaching French became far less important and far less desired and desirable than it had been when Australia followed the British system of education, where French was the second language always. Remember, across the channel, it made sense there. Anyway, so I decided to open a gallery, which was in 1986, and to focus on the contemporary art from the Asia-Pacific region, including Australia. And in order to prepare myself to do that, I started exploring the modern history of China. I knew almost nothing about it. When I did history at school, I didn't do it at university, we focused on European history and on the changing history of Africa. I was at school during the period, a great period of turbulence in Africa, where the entire continent was decolonizing, and the colonial powers, whether it was Britain or Germany, France, or Portugal, were leaving. So I took it into my head to start exploring Chinese philosophy, Chinese history, and Chinese artists who were working at that time. I tried to find them. And in order to help me in that quest, I made friends with a number of people whom I wish could have been here this evening. She wasn't doctor or professor then. She is now, Claire Roberts, who was a curator. Professor Nicholas Joes, again, he wasn't a professor at that time. He was a diplomat, a cultural attaché in Beijing. Linda Javen, who was a journalist at that time, became an author. Professor Jeremy Barmay, who was a professor at that time, classical Chinese scholar. I met Guan Wei, the artist, Xian, the artist, and I also met Kevin Rudd, our former Prime Minister, who was, like the others, had studied Chinese at the Australian National University in Canberra. I travelled to China about 8 or 9 times, over the years, not all in one go, and I learnt a huge amount, but I was also humbled, and I still am, at how much more there was to learn and there is to learn. And many of those people, almost all of them really, have remained very close friends. And then I met Adam Chang. Adam and David, his brother, were regular visitors to Sherman Galleries, which was my commercial gallery that ran from 1986 to 2007. Adam was always the quiet artist with limited English, and David was always the garrulous entrepreneur who tirelessly supported and promoted his brother, and he still does. Adam honoured our family by painting portraits of Bran Sherman, my husband, and it's that portrait there on that facing us wall. He looks younger there than he does now, unsurprisingly. He actually painted 2 portraits of Bran, that one, which is done with a very fine brush and very detailed, where Bran is set aside on one area of the canvas, and another portrait of Bran, which is more like the portrait of John Coetzee, where Bran's face is very much foregrounded. But what I always felt about that portrait of Bran in particular is that it represents Bran. I've been married for 50 years to this guy, so I know him quite well. It's Bran's quietness, it's his interior life that is suggested in that portrait, his gentleness, his compassion for others, particularly animals and people, both animals, all sentient beings really, the poetry in his soul. He's a financier who's really more like a poet. And the second portrait is a more strident image. The brushstroke is sweeping and very energetic. Bran's face is enlarged, like the Coetzee portrait, foregrounded, more central in the picture frame, more assertive. And yet still, in the second portrait of Bran, Adam managed to capture Bran's innate wisdom. And I recognized Adam at that time as a consummate portrait artist, perhaps one of the best in Australia. Adam also painted me for the Archibald, and in my portrait I was quite solemn. I am, at the portrait I've still got it. In many ways I look quite sad, definitely a kind of melancholy feeling emanates from the portrait, and I do recognize something of myself. It's not a happy portrait of my inner pain. We've all got inner pain of some kind, born of several major tragedies in my life over the years, mostly unknown to people outside of my family and close circle of friends. So Adam, without knowing any of this, must have intuited it because he captured something that is in me but which I don't display very often, and certainly not to people in my wider acquaintance. So I recognized Adam again as a portrait artist who is capable, he's technically so good, he's capable of painting anything with consummate ease, any likeness, but yet he does manage, and this is not so easy, to capture the inner being of his subjects. It's one thing to paint their outline and make it look like them. It's another thing to capture something inside. Adam's painted, as I mentioned, John Coetzee. He's a Nobel Prize winner, a South African like we are, a writer. He lives in Adelaide now. He's a patron of Voiceless, our Animal Protection Institute, one of our family philanthropic foundations, which was founded 15 years ago by Bran, my husband, and Ondine Sherman, my daughter. And Coetzee's work, he's a very familiar figure to me, Coetzee. I am a reader, a very determined reader ever since I was a little girl. And I've read everything that Coetzee has written, and I believe we have the complete library of his oeuvre at home, in our home library. And Emile, our son, who's a filmmaker, right at the beginning of his filmmaking career, made a movie out of one of Coetzee's books called Disgrace. The book won the Booker Prize in 2008, and the person who played the main protagonist, Professor Lurie, is John Malkovich. A rather odd choice to play Professor Lurie, but quite an interesting performance. Now, Coetzee, who is a most exacting man, was greatly pleased with his portrait. And this is high praise from this man. He hardly ever speaks, and he has impossibly high exacting standards. And I think if he thought something was good, he's not an easy-to-please person. So, one thing I wanted to mention to David and to Adam is not only is this portrait here and done all the things that it says on the wall label, but there is a series of academic writings on Coetzee. He's very, very famous as a writer. And he went to China. He was like a rock star. The man doesn't he doesn't utter 3 sentences. You're lucky in 3 days to get 3 sentences out of him. But he was welcomed in China as a rock star. He traveled with Nick Joes. And there's a collection of writings on John Coetzee with Adam's portrait on the cover. You've forgotten about that, David. I have to find it in my library, but he's very much connected to Adam through that portrait. So I think that Adam then, as you can see in the show, turned his hand from portrait painting and utilized his talent to explore and to portray the natural world. And you see these pandas. Now, I don't pretend to know much about what I'm about to say, but I do hope I've got this right. You know, in English, we call Tao the way, with a capital W, the way. And it emphasizes the connection, as I understand it, between man and nature, between human beings and other sentient beings. And Lao Tzu, who, as I understand it, was the founder of Taoism, he was a contemporary of Confucius. I'm sure people here know all of this far better than I do. But I did read the Analects of Confucius in an English translation, and I got a sense of those thoughts and sayings. He traveled, he was a scholar, he taught the way, the Tao, and core to his vision, now I'm coming back to Adam, was a return to nature, freedom from desires, everybody who's Chinese knows about this here, flowing with the moment, go with the flow, we say in English, and seeking of calm. And I think that Adam, knowing Adam as I do, and I can't know him really well because language separates us, significantly separates us. I think a lot of these qualities are to be found in Adam's work, that seeking of harmony, that connecting with nature, that sort of slight detachment that you find in Adam's work. China, of course, is home to the panda bear. It's a totem animal in China, just like the kangaroo and the koala are totem animals in Australia. And I don't know how many of you would know the work of Claude Lévi-Strauss, who was a very famous French anthropologist, really the father of modern anthropology, who in his series of books about the cultures of the world divided animals, looking at many different cultures, Australian Aborigines, Inuit people in Canada, all over the world that you have First Peoples cultures. He said there were animals, and I'm saying it in French and I'll translate it, that were bonnes à penser, and animals in all cultures, bonnes à manger. So bonnes à penser is animals that are used totemically, they are conceptually rich in a culture, and animals that are bonnes à manger, that we eat. And, you know, it's, we separate the two. So eating kangaroos, people feel a little bit uncomfortable because they have this totemic quality. So the panda in China symbolizes, I think, problem solving in a peaceful way, conflict resolution where the opponents see the other side of the question. In other words, harmony, balance, spiritual, emotional, and physical balance. Now, it's quite fitting that Adam has chosen the panda as the central protagonist in the show. There's only one of each portrait, but the pandas, there are a number of them. And I couldn't quite, Adam, I have to say, understand why Salvador Dali had to make an appearance in all of this. He is a symbol of creativity. He certainly was a prolifically creative person. He was a superb draftsman, like Adam. He worked on film, jewelry, furniture, photographs, magazine covers, drawings, paintings, and even fashion. He frequented the Surrealist fraternity. André Breton was the Surrealist leader. They threw him out at a time because he was behaving badly. He met Freud, Sigmund Freud, in 1938 in London. But for me, I have to say, Dali was a bit too much of a showman, too much of a performer, and I struggled with why he appeared here, but it seems to me that Adam clearly focused on Dali's most creative persona, which really was revealed up until the Second World War, the beginning in 1939, and he ignored Dali as a stuntman. You'll be pleased to know I'm almost finished. Adam's innocence, I think, collides with Dali's sophistication and ego. And Dali's appearance here is as a result. So, in concluding, I commend Adam Chang's work to you. I hope that I've created some sort of amplified understanding of the show, and I pass the baton on to the next speaker. Thank you for being patient.
Thank you very much, Jean. Let me say welcome to Pro Vice Chancellor of Western Sydney University, Professor James Salvanatakis, and of course, welcome Brian, subject of Adam's painting. Thank you very much for coming to the Institute. Dr. Jean Sherman has been a friend to the artist for many years, like she said herself. She is founder and executive artistic director of Sherman Center for Culture and Ideas, which was established in 2017. Is that right? Yeah. And for 21 years, Dr. Sherman was director and proprietor of Sherman Galleries. From 2008 to 2017, she was chair and executive director of Sherman Contemporary Art Foundation. She's adjunct professor of UNSW. She regularly teaches and lectures on Australian and Asian contemporary art and Australian and Asian private foundations, gallery management, the art of collecting, and architecture and fashion. She was made a member of the Order of Australia in 2010 in recognition of her great work and cultural philanthropy and support for emerging and established artists. Thank you very much again, Jean. Now, our next speaker is Dr. Igor Zhang. Dr. Zhang is an internationally recognized expert on Chinese art. He served as a research fellow at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts and the Metropolitan Museum of Art from 1998 to 2004. He is the author of many books. He did a fascinating exhibition called Brushed Voices. He himself is a calligrapher. The exhibition Brushed Voices, Calligraphy in Contemporary China, which was held in 1998, received very favorable reviews from some of the major news outlets in New York and America. Over to you, Dr. Zhang.
Thank you, Professor Wang. Thank you. First of all, congratulations on the successful opening of ceremony, Adam Zhang's Pandas and Treasure exhibition. Today, I am very glad to be invited to the opening ceremony of Adam Zhang's show. Thanks to Australia-China Institute for Arts and Culture at Western Sydney University for giving me this opportunity to speak here. It is also a great honor for me to meet many artists and many professors, Vice President Mr. Dr. Scott Herman and Ms. Jean Sherman. Thank you. Adam Zhang has unique experience of artistic development throughout his career. He has been living abroad for many years. His persistence in artistic exploration and practice, his down-to-the-earth attitude, and his quiet but mature professional way of working have all contributed to his remarkable achievement. I was initially introduced to Adam Zhang by his brother, David, and then started gradually to know about his art. His series of landscape and pandas are very impressive. He is the man with international attitudes, broad vision, profound thoughts, and innovative spirit. Adam's series of landscape and pandas can be considered as a declaration to the art world. While learning from Western art, he also incorporates and spreads the humanistic spirits of Chinese culture. The most fascinating feature of Adam's work is that it reflects his knowledge of Western arts in Australia, as well as his insightful perspective on foreign cultures. Therefore, he gets inspiration for his artistic creation and is enabled to integrate it successfully into mainstream society. At the same time, he remains Chinese, being exposed to traditional Chinese art and culture as a child. He has rationally studied traditional Chinese landscape painting. During experimentations with Western art and with amalgamation of quintessence of Chinese paintings, he has broken through barriers between the Western and Oriental cultures and eventually discovered his own personal language of art. That is, the integrations of realism and abstraction with the individual spirit, with the individualized pictorial landscape as background. With vigorous and spontaneous brushwork, he depicts the gentleness and the amiableness of pandas as the best image and the significance of Chinese nation. According to Iden, his artworks fully reveal his own philosophic perspective, the harmonious coexistence of man and nature. While celebrating Adam's exhibition opening, I was also welcome the opportunity to listen all artists and scholars present, to hold further discussion with you and learn from you, in hope to introduce his art to Chinese art world. I also hope that in near future, he will have chance to hold such wonderful exhibitions in China so that more Chinese people can appreciate his artwork. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Zhang. Thank you very much. He actually made it to Sydney only a few hours ago. Flew from Beijing to Sydney. Our last speaker, of course, is Adam. Adam Chan is a Sydney-based portraitist. He grew up in Shanghai, but migrated to Australia in 1997. He's 6 times Archibald Prize finalist. His portrait of James Curti won the People's Choice Award in 2011. It's a great honor to have Adam's paintings at this institute for an exhibition for 2 months. The exhibition, I repeat, the exhibition is going to be with us for 2 months. Anyone is welcome to drop in and see the exhibition especially during the weekdays, to see it while we are in office. Adam is a relatively quiet artist. He smiles more than he talks. Every time when I see him, he's got a smile, but it doesn't talk that much. I'm pretty sure he would like to say a few things tonight in response.
我大部分时间呢待在公司室里，平时也很少说话，也很少出来。本来劝就是用英文说的，感觉英文还是不太好。等会由我的英文助手克罗地亚做翻译，等会我懂吧？啊，今天就是我特别高兴，见到很多朋友，非常感谢澳中文化艺术研究院，给我这个机会展示了我的作品。为了这个展览，王院长、Lindsay and David 他们做了大量的工作。非常感谢西雪梨大学副校长 Scott Holmes、简先门和张义国3位博士做了精彩的演讲，特别要感谢的张义国博士， 在百忙之中从北京赶过来，非常感谢。非常感谢艺术投资和收藏家李晓先生的支持。另外，我要感谢我的家人和我的太太多年支持我。最后我也想说的就是，我们在海外生活了这么多年，实际上我们的成功也好，成就也好，都离不开我们祖国的培养，也离不开澳大利亚给我们机会和荣誉。谢谢所有支持我的朋友们。下面有克罗地亚，他看出来。
Thank you, Adam. We didn't realize until quite recently that we had picked a fine time for today's opening. Mid-semester and pre-election. Mid-semester means we have many more students and many more staff members coming and going, and the exhibition will be visited by lots of people. Pre-election means we don't have to face the competition from politics in the next few days. So I wish you a very pleasant stay at the Australia-China Institute for Arts and Culture today, and please enjoy the exhibition and the refreshments and enjoy your catch-up with your friends. Thank you very much. Thank you.